Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Grant, and I represent the City and County of Broomfield and serve as the chair of the DRCOG Transportation Advisory Committee. I call to order the October 27th, 2025 DRCOG TAC meeting at 1:30 p.m. This is an in-person and live stream meeting format, and members of the public attending by Zoom have the ability to mute and unmute themselves and share their webcam. For those attending online, please make sure that you've typed your name and it reflects your first and last name and your representation. We ask that those intending to speak, please use the raise hand button to ask a question or comment on an agenda item. If you have a technical question, please direct them to staff in the chat box. As a reminder to members and alternates here in person, please press the unmute button on the bottom of your mic stand and make sure the light on your microphone is on and you're prepared to speak and speak directly in the microphone so your voice will amplify. Please announce your name and representation when asking a question or making a comment for the record. During the business agenda, TAC members and alternates can speak or ask questions, and members of the public may speak during public comments. DRCOG is sending around a sign-in sheet. Please do sign in. And at this time, members and alternates will introduce themselves in person. I will start with Carson.
Carson Priest, TDM Special Interest Seat.
Ayers, Aviation Special Interest Seat.
Jessica Mickelbus, Department of Transportation, CDOT.
Christina Lane, Jefferson County.
Brent Slaughterland, Arapahoe County, Littleton.
Colleen Kirby Roberts, Environmental Special Interest Seat.
Mike Whitaker, Jeffco Lakewood.
Jim Kotzer, Arapahoe County, Arapahoe County.
Kelly Van Bruggen, Arvada.
Alex Hadright, Boulder County.
Kent Mormon, Adams County, Thornton.
Matt Callison, Arapahoe County, City of Aurora.
Jeff Dankenbring, Arapahoe County, City of Centennial.
Art Griffith with Douglas County.
Michelle Riccio with Adams County.
Jean Sampson, City of Boulder.
Jenna Hahn, Adams County, City of Commerce City.
Sam Kennedy, DRCOG staff.
Sarah Grant, City and County of Broomfield.
Testing. Okay, good. So I think this is the first meeting since this has happened, so you all know who I am. I don't need to introduce myself, but as of mid-August, I am DRCOG's new Director of Transportation Planning and Operations. Thank you. It feels incredibly self-indulgent to say it 2 months later, but just in case anyone hadn't heard, but thank you all so much. It means a lot.
Frank Bruno, via Mobility Service, sitting next to Jacob.
Michelle Malinakis, Boulder County, City of Lafayette.
Miguel Aguilar, Southwest Weld County.
Jim Houston, CDOT Region 4.
Marissa Gahan, CDOT Division of Transportation Development.
Justin Begley, City County of Denver.
Chris Hudson, Douglas County, Town of Parker.
Justin Schmitz, City of Lone Tree, Douglas County.
Hi, Chris Quinn with RTD Planning. David Kretzinger, City and County of Denver.
Carolyn Clam, DRCOG staff.
David Gaspers, City and County of Denver.
Thank you, everyone, and congratulations, Jacob. Well earned and well deserved. And thank you for your continued leadership for DRCOG and our region. So I'll pass it back to Jacob right now. We have no new alternates or members, but I do think we have a series of announcements that we would like to make.
Thank you, Chair Grant. Yes, for once, we don't have membership changes this month, and yet I still have a lot of announcements. You're welcome. So a few things. First on the agenda, you all should have received, I believe we sent out on Friday, some supplemental candidate project applications that had come in to us late last week, but we still wanted to put them in the packet and show them. So you should have received those by the end of last week. Let's see, we made a sort of slight terminology change to our agenda this month, starting with this month's meeting. Typically, we have action items. We all know what those are. We've had discussion items, which are informational briefings. That's the change that we've made. Consistent with our board agenda nomenclature, we are now calling discussion items, which were always informational. We are now calling them informational briefings. And then we occasionally have items that we just include in the packet, like those grant information forms. Those are informational items. That name stays the same. So really we're changing discussion items because everything is a discussion item, but we're distinguishing between those we vote on, which are action items, and those where we're just providing information, which are informational briefings. So you will see that on the agenda today and going forward. Let's see. Couple other things. You'll notice on our agenda that our next meeting is November 17th. We are keeping that on the calendar for now. There is a reasonably good chance we're going to cancel it, but I'm not going to tell you today it's going to be canceled, because if I say that, then we'll never get it back if we need it. As we get closer to mid-November, we will let you know for sure, but a reasonable expectation is that our next meeting will be in December. And then last thing, and because of that, sort of even because of it and despite that, we do need to, according to our committee guidelines, elect a new chair and vice chair, which we do in odd-numbered years for 2-year terms. We want to hold elections for chair and vice chair at our December meeting. So particularly since we're not likely to have a November meeting, we do want to ask for volunteers to be on a nominating panel, as we typically do, to help solicit and vet candidates and make a recommendation to you all at the December meeting. In terms of our committee guidelines, committee members shall elect a chair and vice chair to serve 2-year terms. Elections shall be held during the 4th quarter of odd-numbered years. That's all that's in our committee guidelines. In practice, our chair and vice chair have typically been local government members, because you all are the majority of TAC membership. Anyone can serve on the nominating panel. We typically have had some subject matter experts be on the nominating panel, but if you know that you're not interested as a local government person in running for chair or vice chair, you could also volunteer to be on the nominating panel. But I would like, say, 5-ish folks to be on the nominating panel to kind of help, again, with that process of both identifying, soliciting, and vetting candidates for chair and vice chair, which, again, we'll vote on at our December meeting. Those folks will serve terms starting January 26th through December of 27. So I'll let you all think about it, but if there is anyone who's really eager and on the spot, is there anyone who would like to serve on the nominating panel? Sarah, I think you already volunteered, which I appreciate very much, as the outgoing chair. Anyone else? Frank? Great, just shout them out and I'll write them down.
Brody Ayers.
Hey,
Anyone
Sarah, Frank, Jean, Brody. Okay, that is a good group to start with. Again, think on it. If you would like to volunteer, it's not a big time commitment. Let me know either after the meeting or at some point. Just reach out to me and I'll add you to the list. But thank you all very much. And Chair Grant, I think those are all my announcements.
Thank you, Jacob. At this time, we will open up the meeting for public comment, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If you've joined by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button, and we'll call on you to begin speaking. If you joined by phone, please raise your virtual hand by pressing *9, and we'll call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Staff will unmute you, and you will need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, after which we'll ask you to wrap up. As a reminder, after public comment, only TAC members and alternates will be able to partake in the discussion regarding each agenda item. This time, do we have any public comment? Either in person or online? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period. Next on the agenda is the meeting summary of the September 22nd, 2025. This is attachment A in your packet. Is there any discussion or corrections or questions about the meeting summary from September? Seeing none, the meeting summary will stand. Thank you. We'll move on to our action item for the day, which is the Active Transportation Plan, attachment B in your packet. This will be presented by Erin Villery, Senior Active Transportation Planner for DRCOG.
All right, and thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Grant and members of the committee. My name is Erin Villery. I'm the Senior Active Transportation Planner, and I'm very excited today to present the update to the Regional Active Transportation Plan. So we set out on this process about 18 months ago to do a major update to the Active Transportation Plan for the region. This was last adopted in 2019. And so I've put forward the vision set forward in the plan, which is that the Active Transportation Plan envisions a region where all people living, working, and visiting have access to safe and comfortable walk, bike, and roll. The plan establishes a regional active transportation network that is complete, connected, and comprehensive, and recommends actions for DRCOG and its partners to extend access to active transportation through policy, programs, guidance, and encouragement. So that really sets forward what the scope of this plan was to establish a network and then to give us some actions to implement that plan. And so I just want to take you on a quick tour of the plan and sort of the process for developing it. So the sort of key thing that really undergirded this plan was the Active Transportation Advisory Group, which was formed of DRCOG member government staff and partner agency staff. And this was really sort of the backbone of the plan development process. So really working with you all to develop this. So we had, over this planning process, we had 8 committee meetings. We did 2 pretty in-depth surveys of the group. We had 3 network review periods that we worked with you all. And I really can't thank the advisory group enough for their engagement and their thoughtfulness, orientation throughout the plan. Another part of the public engagement is sort of as I've come and updated this, we really wanted to be targeted and thoughtful and approaching, when we think about active transportation in the region, who faces barriers to using the active transportation system, and how can we really develop a plan that responds to those barriers so that we're increasing access for all by targeting, this is the curb cut effect in action, that by targeting those barriers, how can we improve the system for everyone? Focus groups, we did this through having office hours at different points in the through doing some targeted community outreach, like through Bike to Work Day, and then also having a community advisory group that we were able to send out to and have some targeted communications with. And so the process continued. Really the things that we were focusing on were the network development. This is kind of the crux of the plan, or the keystone, which was developed through technical analysis, through stakeholder feedback, developing plan recommendations. How are we actually going to implement this? How are we going to put it into action? So we developed a lot of this through a staff workshop with DRCOG staff, developing feedback, and then doing peer MPO research, for instance. And then finally, developing resource guides. One of the things that we kind of encountered early is in the updating this plan at this interval is because there are some pretty acute challenges that the region is around active transportation, and so we wanted to develop some supplementary guidance as well to actually support implementation and to support you all. That could be more of a living set of resources. So these are based on national local best practices, and then a lot of substantive input from stakeholders and members of the. So just giving you all a refresh in the timeline, we kicked this off in summer of 2024. Where we developed sort of the first pass at the vision and plan themes and goals. Really the fall and winter were devoted to develop those networks and getting feedback on those active transportation networks. Doing continued consultation with the advisory group. And then in the spring, we really went into plan production. This summer, we focused on doing comment review or draft plan review. Out, and now we're kind of in this last stage, hopefully, of going into option period. So that's kind of how the plan has progressed. As you know, as we've talked about at different meetings, the regional network is sort of the core of the plan. It's a 3-part network. This is consistent with what you would have seen in the last active transportation plan. We kept the same framework because had received feedback on it, and we liked how it was working. So it's really built around the pedestrian focus areas, which are meant to use different demographic and use and transit information to unlock where is there sort of either existing or latent demand for walking as a form of transportation. So these are sort of district-based geographies that try to respond to those population factors. To unlock more opportunities for walking. The short trip opportunity zones, which really use DRCOG's regional focused travel model of where do we see a large concentration of trips under 2 miles that we think are shiftable to active modes if the infrastructure and systems are in place. And then finally, the regional active transportation corridors, which are meant to be consistent with local bike plans, with the regional sort of trail vision and shared use path network, really focusing on functional transportation trips, but also creating more consistent access throughout the region. So in more urbanized parts of the region, having a tighter grid spacing of those regional corridors that hopefully will have a high level of comfort for active users. And as you get out into more rural context, you have a larger grid spacing. That's really a mix of functional transportation and recreation trips, but what are the major spines and corridors? And together we sort of see this interlocking set of networks. This will form basis of active transportation tip prioritization and helping to guide local planning, helping to inform interjurisdictional coordination. So this is really the crux of the plan, to provide sort of a mix of, what are the priorities throughout the region for a cohesive, connected, complete network, but also making sure that we're aligning well and supporting local planning initiatives. And then finally, how are we going to put this into action? How are we going to implement this? So I just wanted to quickly run through what are the recommended plan actions. This is the last chapter of the plan itself. And really what we're hoping to do to hit the ground running over the next few years, especially. So first of all, developing a region-wide gaps analysis for walking and bicycling. So now that we have an established network and sort of a vision for where it's going, one of the things that we'd like to do is really take on a regional look at what are the needs and to fill in the gaps in the network. So that's kind of a first step to kind of help support implementation of the network itself. We also, action number 2 is expanding DRCOG's capacity to support our member government's multimodal planning, design, and evaluation work. This kind of builds on some recent successes that we've had as an agency of working directly with you all through things like tip set-aside programs and other planning efforts that how can DRCOG fill in some of the skill gaps? How can we support your capacity to do? So thinking about our own way that we structure our work to really support how we're augmenting local planning. Supporting land use and development initiatives that advance active transportation and mode shift for short trips. And so this is really just about making sure that we're communicating between sides of our planning brain, making sure that we're doing coordination around supportive land use that it encourages and enables walking and bicycling. And then number 4, I just want to call out, so update the Transportation Improvement Program policy to include minimum active transportation facility standards and guidance that build on the regional complete. And so this is really meant as an enabling action. So we put this in here. This does not change the tip policy. This sort of sets an anchor or a benchmark of how we want to maybe think about the next iteration of the tip policies, that there are some sort of minimum active transportation facilities that are consistent with new regulations like PROAG, making sure that any tip funded projects are consistent with law. But also, how does it speak to other adopted things like the regional complete streets? What constitutes a comfortable facility on different complete sites? And so it really sets up that next conversation as opposed to the plan itself establishing those minimum standards. That's something that we really want to do as an action is have that conversation as a region about what do comfortable biking and walking facilities look like. I wanted to spend some time on that one. Number 5, develop and implement a regional active transportation count strategic plan to benchmark active transportation activity. And so this is really how are we tracking progress? How are we, modeling active transportation trips throughout the region? How are we using our assets to support local counts? And so we'll be doing that as one of the first plans is setting up a strategic. Number 6, expanding benchmarking of active transportation safety trends. Of course, one of the animating needs of this plan is supporting, is moving towards Vision Zero and specifically addressing the recent pedestrian injury fatalities especially. So we more work or continued work to benchmark the safety trends and what are some of the issues. Start moving the needle in the right direction. Number 7, explore alternative funding strategies to raise funds for and support completion of the region-wide active transportation network. Something that came up as a common theme throughout this planning process was the difficulty of funding rising costs and just the difficulty of funding active transportation programs. So we want to spend some time thinking strategically about how DRCOG supports that work, not just through the what are some other strategies that gone to support local implementation. Leveraging the active transportation network to support operational activities at the local level. And what we mean by this is really, you know, we've collected a lot of data. We curate a lot of geospatial data, especially. A lot of this planning work. How can we support all the different things operationally at the local level with all these assets that we have? So things like supporting local wayfinding plans and sort of acting as supporting things like emergency response and just exploring what are the opportunities there that DRCOG can play a role as a regional. Number 9, support and expand bicycling and walking promotion encouragement programs. And so really supporting the great work that's happening through our Way to Go program to continue expanding participation in different bicycle promotion events, commuter encouragement, things like that. And then finally, updating performance measures for active transportation progress that DRCOG supports. And so just making sure that we're going to track on a regular basis progress towards implementing the plan. You also will have received in your packets 2 supplementary guides that are not being included for adoption because we want them to be living resources. We want to be able to update them as the practice evolves, but we are really excited about having completed them as companions to the active transportation plan. So first, the sidewalk delivery guide, which is really built around 4 chapters, designing accessible, inviting walking spaces. And so we really wanted to respond to what does accessibility look like in sidewalk design and pedestrian design? Building on recent guidance from FHWA and the U.S. Access Board, just understanding how different users of the street and of sidewalks experience sidewalks and what are some best practices and emerging practices there. Delivering sidewalks challenges and solutions. This is a lot of engagement with the advisory group, of course. Around what are the major barriers right now, you know, whether that's contractor shortages, labor and staffing shortages, rising material and labor costs, things like that, and what are some sort of regional and national peer examples to try to accelerate delivery of sidewalk projects. Seeking durable and adequate funding and just looking for some models to raise funding for sidewalk projects. And so we we developed some guidance and some examples around funding programs. And then finally, evaluating performance. What are some examples for sidewalk programs and projects? Second supplementary guide is the Bicycle Plus program guide, which really, again, we wanted to respond to this emerging need of there are all these new types of micromobility vehicles. So scooters, of course, are the big one that I think are top of mind for a lot of people. E-bikes, but also one-wheels, hoverboards are a smaller part of the pie. But just kind of benchmarking some of those emerging mobility vehicles, discussing different local and national guidance resources. So things like the new AASHTO guide, the new NACTO bike guide. You know, how did these fit together? And we wanted to just build on those resources. Chapter 3 was design controls for emerging modes, so just getting some basic parameters around, you know, the size and speed of some of these different vehicles. Chapter 4 is context-sensitive bicycle plus design, and on things like FHWA, facility selection guidance, NACDO guidance, to try to give people some different options and just a number 5 is focus on regional connector streets. And between 4 and 5, we actually developed a matrix where we take the different street types in the complete streets typology, including the regional connector streets, and just talked about the appropriateness of different facility types and different design elements within each of those street types to try to give some guidance on how you might apply bicycle plus design to streets in the regional complete street topology. Number 6 is strategies for shared use path comfort. This really focuses on something that we heard a lot, which is that you now have with e-bikes, especially and scooters, and of course people walking on shared use paths, you have higher speed differentials between different users. And so just trying to put together some guidance on the design. And finally, some maintenance and operations guidance. All right, so that is everything that's included in the packet. Just a little summary. So we went through a public comment period. The last time I was here was right before we started this. So for the month of August, we were in a public comment period that included the Plan and 2 resource guides. We had a project engagement website. We sent out a couple email blasts to different groups to raise awareness. We held 3 advisory groups during that comment period that to try to give people multiple on-ramps to provide feedback. We had office hours, and we received 82 comments between the engagement website, email, and advisory group meeting office hours. Those were all addressed and responded to in the plan. And just to sort of go over some highlights, people really wanted to, really emphasized enabling seamless regional travel. That DRCOG sort of angle is coordinating a complete and cohesive system. We received comments about how we inform and drive funding decisions using this plan, the importance of expanding sidewalk and active corridors for comfortable use, and then strength. And just to give you a tease of what we see as sort of the early steps out of the gate, in early 2026, we want to jump right into supporting the TIP policy update, taking what we learned from this process, and really driving that discussion of what does the next TIP policy look like. We want to commence the region-wide gaps analysis to develop that resource, and we want to start developing the active modes count strategy. So with that, I have a motion. Eddie.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for this update on the final active transportation plan update. Are there any questions or comments for DRCOG? And please remember to announce your name and your representative.
Thanks, Kent Mormon with Thornton and Adams County. Thanks, Aaron. Overall, I thought this was a fairly good report. My question is, there's maps in there. Are you going to have links that will go from the report when it's final to your data catalog, or will these only be in the data catalog on these maps so that if we want to zoom in on certain areas that we can, or are these going to be static and not zoomable?
Yes, once we get to final adoption, that was a comment that we received multiple times, and we would like to have like a permanent URL that does link to that, because you're correct, it's hard to tell at a good level. Things, but the data layers will certainly be available on the data catalog. We plan a data tool so that they're explorable, and yes, we would like to have a permanent URL in the plan to online map.
Matt Callison.
Thank you. Matt Callison, City of Aurora, Arapahoe County. Thank you for the report, Aaron and the DRCOG team. Question on recommended action number 10. 110, was there any consideration given developing forecasting methods for getting a better handle on bike ped various socioeconomic and site and situation contextual elements of local jurisdictions?
Yeah, and I would say that actually, I would say it lives a little bit more in recommended action number 5, which is the count strategic plan. But yes, that's something that we're very interested in. Have some early actions through the innovative mobility side actually to kind of start testing some of those options. But yes, we would like to expand our benchmarking and how we're modeling during bicycle bus activity.
Thank you for that. And then a follow-up question in terms of crossings, methodologies and approaches local jurisdictions could look towards push forward crossings, mid-block crossings.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you asked about that. One of the things that we did, in the sidewalk delivery guide, we wanted to keep this out of the plan. But one of the things that we actually did was a sort of first pass at a crossing gap analysis, which is using the regional LRS data set, which is our street data set, and using some HWA step guide to actually assess distance to a high comfort crossing along the regional roadway network. So one of the things that we would really like to do is continue honing that, just because it's sort of a first pass planning tool to say, like, where is it, a very long distance, is it a quarter mile or more from a given road segment to access an opportunity to cross the street. It's definitely trying to set up that work that we want. It was a large piece of feedback that we received a number of just kind of during conversations about route travel. So yes, absolutely. So the sidewalk guide, I would say, is kind of the place, that high comfort crossing analysis that we're excited to keep as a planning.
Thank you.
Michelle Riccio.
Hey, Erin, thank you for this and for multiple avenues for us to submit feedback. That was really helpful. Does DRCOG have a comment log with responses that they'd be able to share out?
Yes, I can absolutely send it to you if you'd like it as an Excel sheet. It's also included as a rather unwieldy table in Appendix C, I believe, the engagement summary. But yes, if you'd like to see the whole comment log, your form.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Jacob, do you have a few words?
Yeah, just wanted to say thanks so much to Aaron, in particular as the project manager for this plan update, Emily Lindsay, the other staff who participated, our consultant, Nelson Nygaard, all of you who helped contribute to this plan. This is one of our foundational plan documents, as Aaron alluded to, and you can tell in his presentation, it was just a tremendous amount of work. So just want to recognize the staff and everyone who contributed. Thank you.
I echo that, and thank you, Aaron, for your work and your team's work for this major update to the transportation plan and furthering our region for active transportation and providing additional technical guidance and expanding the networks and coming up with some really thoughtful recommendations of how we can keep improving our network in the region. So. Any additional questions or comments from the TAC? Jeff Dankenbring.
No comments. I just wanted to go ahead and make the motion.
Jeff Dankenbring has made the motion to recommend the Regional Transportation Committee to adopt the active transportation plan.
Thanks for reading that, Chair Grant.
Second.
We have a second from Frank Bruno. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Congratulations, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our action items for the day. We have a series of informational briefings, as formerly noted as discussion items, will now be informational briefings. This is item number 5 in your packet, finishing the Fast Tracks report. This is attachment C in your packet, and this will be introduced by Jacob Rieger, Director of Transportation Planning and Operations.
All right, while we are working on technical difficulties, I really just wanted to introduce this item. You all are aware of it. RTD published a draft report a few weeks ago. They've done a presentation to our board, actually, at our October meeting. We thought it was important that they come to you, the same kind of discussion and dialogue here. So once we get it all set up, it would be my pleasure to introduce Chris Quinn, Senior Planning Project Manager at RTD. Close enough. All right. So in a moment, Chris will present on RTD's draft finishing Fast Tracks report.
Thanks, Jacob, for that introduction. Again, I'm Chris Quinn. I am with the RTD Planning Department, and what we'll be going over today is as long as it works. A couple of the things we'll be going over today are just the background of the report. I think everybody is aware of the report itself, as Jacob indicated. We'll provide some updated corridor costs and the background of how we got there, discuss the fiscal capacity of what RTD currently has and some of the grant options that are out there, and then go over, kind of summarize the whole process and what the next steps are as we move forward. So the background of this is, I think here again, everybody's aware of this, but back in 2004, voters of the RTD district approved the Fast Tracks plan. Since 2004, RTD has completed approximately 75% of the program. However, there are still some rather large gaps that do need to be completed. The big one being we've constructed about 6 miles of the Northwest Rail, but there remains about another plus or minus 36 miles that have to be completed. In the case of the North Metro, I think it's about 5 miles that still need to be completed. Southwest Extension about 2.5, and Central Connection about 1. So, you know, add it all up, and there's quite a bit that still does need to be completed. Over the last couple of years, there's been I'm going to say a flurry of legislation, but there's been some legislation that's come out of the state. First, SB 24230, which directed RTD to not only prioritize the completion of the North Metro and the Northwest Rail, but also to provide a report on how RTD could complete the projects. That legislation was amended by SB 161 this last spring, which also directed RTD to discuss a little bit more some of the potential for some debt financing. So, and also moved out the deadline for the report submittal. So it is now December of this year. So back in, just for a little bit of more background, back in 2019, RTD staff did complete what we called the unfinished corridors report. And So for this report, we took a lot of the information that was provided in that report and updated the cost information. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the actual cost slide. But what we did was we updated the capital and operating costs to reflect inflation. And then we've also provided some updated revenue projections. And as part of this also, we met with local jurisdictions with the uncompleted corridors, just to find out if there were things that changed on the ground, which could, may or may not have effect on the completion of the program. The one exception was the Northwest Rail, since we did just complete a year ago the Northwest Rail peak service feasibility study. Everybody here again, something else, sort of common knowledge at this point, but one of the things that, pardon the pun, derailed the plan of towards the beginning of the process was the Great Recession. During that period, we had very low growth in sales and use tax, much lower than had been projected within the Fast Track's financial plan. And then at that same time, kind of like two opposing forces, we also had construction cost, substantial construction cost escalation. And then, of course, most recently in the last several years, coming out of COVID, had some supply chains and disrupted labor markets as well, which all have played a kind of negative effect on the completion of the program. So as part of the report, though, we have included updated corridor costs. There's a little bit, just a slight bit of an apples and orange comparison here. As I noted earlier, the Northwest Rail, since we did just complete that report back in 2024, we do have significantly more on the ground, up-to-date information for that corridor than we do for the North Metro, Southwest, and Central Extension. For those three, as I said, we took the costs that we had provided in the 2019 Finishing Fast Tracks report, broke all the costs down into the Federal Transit Administration has a template called standard cost categorizations, broke down all the costs by the FTA categories, and then inflated those out. We actually brought in an outside consultant to help us with this to inflate those costs up into 2024. The number, so then for the total to complete the program, pretty high, about $1.6 billion. And then we also show within the same table the annual operating costs for each one of the projects, as well as the daily boardings in the 2045 horizon year. Here again, a bit of an apples and orange comparison. For the North Metro, Southwest, and Central, we used the FTA, and I'm going to kind of dive into the weeds here. We used the FTA STOPS model. That's the model that's used to determine the eligibility for capital investment grants, also known as the New Starts, Small Starts program. But for the Northwest Rail, we used the standard DRCOG ridership model. So again, just a slight difference there, probably not having any significant ridership impact on any one of the corridors, but that's how we got to these numbers. So for the fiscal capacity that RTD currently has right now is a bit limited, and I'm going to caveat the next several slides with there are some things in motion right now. Our board is currently wrestling with some very difficult budget decisions, so we have not yet approved, and we thought this would have been approved last month, our typical 5-year financial plan, which ordinarily gets approved in October, and nor have we approved the 2026 budget. So all of the numbers that I'm throwing out are completely subject to change depending on how our board moves forward over the next couple of months. But a few things in the background that don't change, that are shown at least on this slide, is Right now, we have fairly limited reserve funds. And then another big thing is, in terms of debt, when the Fast Tracks program was approved in 2004, it had a specific amount, a number indicated for the high end that we would use for debt capacity. Right now, we basically hit that ceiling. We have about $2.7 million remaining that we could issue in debt. So in terms of, in the scheme of a program like this, that's virtually nothing. There could be the ability to issue certificates of participation, also known as COPs. However, one of the challenges we would have with that is, while we would be able to, the way COPs work is you're basically using collateral, the project itself, making this up, maybe the railways or the cars as collateral. So that is something that could be considered. However, currently we don't have a mechanism or a funding stream to pay back that debt. So while it would be possible to potentially issue it, we wouldn't be able to pay it back. Now, that was the doom and gloom part. We do have some potential out there for funding, somewhat limited, but it does provide, a path for us to start thinking about if we are moving forward. Back in 2012, the RTD board created the Fast Tracks Internal Savings Account, also known as the FISA. What we did there is let me back up. The original Fast Tracks plan included approximately 1.3% annual bus service increases. We stopped that beginning in 2012, 2013, took the savings from that and placed those dollars into the Fast Tracks Internal Savings Account, FISA. Also, there were some other components that funded it as well, such as land sales, if there were project savings on other corridors, all of those funds would go into the FISA. We're projecting right now, and this is another area that the number is a little bit fluid, depending on what the 5-year financial plan forecast that we had would have taken some funds out of there. So the 2030 balance would be $145 million. Our board of directors may not be going in that direction right now, so it could be anywhere between $145 and $190 million, just depending on what actions the board does take over the next month or two. So again, if you hear a different number 2 weeks from now, that's why that has changed. There's also now quite a bit of state funding that has become available within the last few years, specifically SB 21260, 24230, and 24184. First one, we don't expect a lot of money to be available under that one, SB 260. In our discussions with DRCOG, we would expect that in the period from about 2030 to 2032, there'd be plus or minus maybe $30 million available for us to compete for. But one of the bigger ones would be the oil and gas production fees, which is expected to bring in approximately $90 million a year statewide beginning next year. Right now, the way the allocation is, I believe it's 20% allocated for rail statewide. And then lastly, the rental car fee, which is estimated to bring in $58 million per year. We have not seen yet if any mechanism for distributing those funds has been established, but we've been in close discussions with the state on what types of funds, what level of funding we might be able to expect as we move forward. Some additional revenue sources. In the past, on the corridors, and several of the corridors that have been built, most the big ones being the A line to the airport, the W line to Golden, as well as the G line out to Arvada, we did get substantial federal funding for those through the capital investment grant, which again is also known as the New Start, Small Start grant program. We have run the analysis on the criteria that are used by the federal government or the FTA to determine eligibility for the remaining corridors. And for at least right now, or under current conditions, none of the corridors would qualify, but it's certainly something that we will continue to monitor and watch. We also recognize that there are some other federal programs out there, including the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Program, also known as CRISI. We, RTD, are not eligible to apply for that since we are not a regional rail carrier. However, we do have, it being a member of the Joint Service Agreement, which is the statewide program, we do recognize, there may be the ability for partnerships so that we can leverage our funds together. And then lastly, the Build Grant Program, which not huge sums of money there, but it is certainly something else that could, if we're looking just to cobble money together, every little piece could help. So just, I guess this slide really summarizes where we are. So assuming about $1.6 billion in total costs for the remainder of the program, given the money that we think may be available through the state funding and our own Fast Track's internal savings account, it puts us at a pretty significant shortfall, $1.2 billion. And that would be if we were to try to complete the corridors by 2034. So really the takeaway message from all of this is, in order to complete the program, I hate the term bottom line, but the bottom line really would be we would need to find some additional sources of funding, recognizing grateful for the money that is out there, that the legislature has started setting up funds that could be eligible for transit and for completion of the program, but we're still in a position where we don't have the funds to complete the program. So, as I noted at the beginning of the presentation, we have built about 75%, but that 25% is still a big piece. We would need additional funding beyond what's available from the state in our internal savings account. And then lastly, as not a little bit more than as a footnote, I also want to mention that, when we were coming up with our cost estimates, we were doing design, we were basing that on design that's done several years ago. So we would recognize that additional design work may need to be done would need to be done for these corridors, as well as potential environmental work. All of the cost dollars that we provided are in 2024 dollars. We did not inflate those to year of expenditure simply because we didn't know what year construction would be occurring for any one of the corridors. So needless to say, if we magically stumble on the money to do any one of these corridors tomorrow or the next day, obviously it's going to be a little bit more expensive than the 2024 dollars that we've estimated as part of this report. And I think, just real quick, so next steps, at least in terms of the bigger steps, is on October 21st, we went before the Transportation Legislative Review Committee at the Capitol. On Tuesday, the 28th, tomorrow, we will be, the board meeting, the RTD board meeting that meeting will serve as an open forum for people to come in and provide comment. On Friday, the 14th of November, that's when the comment period closes, and then we'll be submitting the final report to the legislature at the end of November. The ability to comment online is still there. All you have to do to get on to find the site is just type in RTD Finishing Fast Tracks report. Within that, within the website, there is not only the report, the highlights of the report, a comment form section, so those can be submitted electronically as well. And so to find the report, just do a search for RTD Finishing Fast Tracks. So with that, any questions that anyone had, I will try to come up with a good response, so.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for the update on the finishing fast tracks report and providing this this information to the TAC. Are there any questions from the TAC to RTD? Comments? Jessica Mickelbest.
Thanks for the presentation. It's a hard time, sorry. Just curious if there's an easy spot to find. It looks like you've got the annual boardings and horizon year. Are those the projected, and have those changed since, what's the capacity, I guess? Is there an easy place to kind of see if we built out the whole system, is it full of riders? I guess that would be just a data piece I'm curious about if that's online.
So as an example, if we built all the corridors versus one of the corridors, whether that would have I think we looked at them all individually. I will find a response for you because I don't know. It's a good question.
Okay, when you mentioned small starts, I was curious if since you didn't qualify, if you're unable to show ridership, heavy ridership, because small starts requires that higher ridership numbers to qualify.
Yeah, so for all of them, like I said, we did run the STOPS model, which is required for small starts. All of them except for Northwest, because we'd already done the modeling as part of the Northwest feasibility study. But I think we had looked at them all as standalone as opposed to the full system build out. But I'll get confirmation on that.
Okay.
So.
And Mormon.
Thanks, Chris, for the report. On that slide you have up there, you show boardings. Is that for the entire line, or is that just for the extensions?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I should have meant, sorry, I didn't note that in the presentation. That is for the extensions themselves. So, so obviously, yeah, the whole line would be higher.
Dean Sanson. Chris, thanks so much for this presentation and for the transparency. I think it's helpful for the whole region to see the state of fast tracks and what kind of lift it would take to complete. It's not easy times for RTD. It hasn't been since fast tracks passed in 2004, right? And so thank you for this update. I guess one comment I would make, and I think this is something that representatives from the Northwest area will be making at the RTD board meeting as well, is just when you look at these numbers on the face, for instance, Northwest Rail Peak Service at a cost of $650 million, just the capital cost alone, it looks like it would never happen, right? And there is information in the unfinished fast tracks report related to joint service, but we would like that lifted, knowing that the Senate Bill 184 Executive Committee is currently negotiating with Burlington Northern Santa Fe to understand the real costs that would be asked of RTD to share in a joint service project to provide service to our Northwest area communities and further north to Loveland and Fort Collins as a sort of first phase of Northwest Rail. And we expect that number would be significantly less than that $650 million. And so I know that the timing isn't ideal because that information isn't yet publicly available, but if there's an opportunity to continue to update this information and to note that within the report, I think that would be helpful in terms of being transparent about what the more immediate window of opportunity is to complete one of the 4 unfinished corridors. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jean, for bringing that up. That's a very good point. And as you noted, we do discuss that a little bit more in the report, and the presentations, we've sort of just glossed through that. But yeah, given the fact that it's still a little bit ephemeral, we don't know what numbers we actually could rely on. But to your point, which is a very good one, is that it is an area of opportunity between leveraging the multiple agencies where we can have a lot more oomph and boom for the buck. And also, to your point, then the number that RTD would be providing could be significantly lower. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thanks. Yeah.
Any additional questions or comments for RTD? Seeing none, thank you, Chris, for the update on the fast tracks report. Next item on the agenda is item number 6. This is the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan Update, Candidate Project Submittals, Attachment D in your packet. This will be presented by Alvin Vidal Sanchez, Regional Transportation Planning Program Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I have a quick slide deck just to make sure we're keeping all of our members apprised of how our call for projects is going for the Regional Transportation Plan update. Before I get into it, do just want to share some thanks from the DRCOG staff side. I have been sharing this in forums as y'all have been meeting, one-on-ones as we've been having those conversations, but I do appreciate all the work you, your counties, your forums took during this call for projects. I know 6 weeks isn't a long time for that call, and I know there's a lot of coordination going on in those meetings, outside of those meetings, with other partners not in those rooms. So I do appreciate all that effort. We're in what is probably the most, if not exciting, the part that everyone's most interested in during our project update. So I'll do a quick slide deck, just where we are with our process of next steps that we're looking for. So our call for projects has closed. It closed October 17th. DRCOG staff are scoring those. They have until the end of this week to work through all of the projects that we did receive during the call. That call opened late August. Ultimately, we're looking at December TAC to take an action before our technical body to start the recommendation towards January RTC and board adoption. From there, we'll move into modeling, and as you've heard me say multiple times, it takes us months to get through that work, that we have to show compliance for our federal and state partners to ensure that we're maintaining federal resources in our region. One of the attachments that we included in the packet for this item was the carryover projects. So we had, at the beginning of this process, established projects that we were going to carry forward automatically. So those did not require an application from a project sponsor, a project applicant, a lead applicant to resubmit for, to be evaluated for. These were projects that were either already in NEPA or construction or had funding for those phases in our transportation improvement program. So we didn't want to spook any of our project applicants. If they had projects in these phases, would it or would it not carry forward in the next plan? So we did carry those forward automatically, and those are shown visually on the map on your screen. The map was not able to be provided as an attachment, but the list of projects were. I believe there are around 40 or so projects across the region that we were carrying forward automatically. As you look at this map on the screen, you'll see many fall in our 2020 to 2029 staging period. So they are right on the cusp, potentially of being open for traffic or open to revenue service if they were a transit project. Moving to our call for projects, we did receive 127 submittals by 5 p.m. On Friday, October 17th. One of the attachments that we updated was projects that we received after our call for projects closed. The bulk of submittals were from our county transportation forums, so 104. CDOT, both regions 1 and 4, provided 14. DRCOG provided 8, and then RTD provided 1. That was just at the time that the call for project closed on the 17th. We did receive another handful of projects that were after the call that we did include in the packet materials, but these numbers do not reflect those submittals. So right now, we are in the middle of evaluating those projects and in what we're calling our interagency coordination process. So CDOT, DRCOG, and RTD staff are meeting weekly now, going through all of these submittals, and we'll be meeting weekly through early November to get through this process. We are starting our evaluation process, so DRCOG staff, like I mentioned, are scoring all projects that we did receive during the call, as well as the late submittals. We will be moving in early November to a couple meetings with our regional review panel, and then those will lead into the investment priorities that we bring back before y'all to start the recommendation process that gets us to our final adopted list before the board. A refresher, we are evaluating these projects using the 6 adopted regional transportation plan priorities: multimodal mobility, freight, active transportation, safety, air quality, and regional transit. I know a number of the forums and counties as well leverage these to help identify projects for their own processes. And then we also have Metro Vision objectives focused on resilience, housing, and maintenance reliability of the transportation systems. Wanted to make sure we were providing as much benefits to evaluate from our project applicants for DRCOG staff. I've mentioned the regional review panel, so those meetings have been scheduled with the representatives from each of the forums or the counties, as well as staff from DRCOG, the 2 CDOT regions, and RTD. In those meetings, we'll be providing the scores that DRCOG staff are currently scoring, as well as information on congestion around the corridors using our travel model, a new analysis leveraging our equity index, prioritization if that was provided by the counties, and any public feedback to date. So how are the priorities that we're evaluating comparing to what we've heard from our public feedback. All of this will be combined with our draft financial plan, which we're still building with our regional partners, CDOT, DRCOG, RTD, and identifying what funding is available out to 2050. And then we'll be bringing that before our committees and the board for recommendation. It's been a bit since we provided an update on the engagement side of the RTP, so I did want to also highlight some of the findings that we've been hearing as we've been out across the region. We did have a survey out, both a print version at our pop-up events that we were attending, as well as online through our social pinpoint site. We reached almost 1,500 folk across the region at in-person events across all of our communities, as many as we can make it out to. And then we do have 2 focus groups, the Civic Advisory Group and the Youth Advisory Panel. Combined across the meetings that we've had, we have reached 34 folk in those 2 groups. Generally speaking, people prefer improving transit, ways people can bike and walk, and maintenance of the system. 54% of survey respondents, 58%, depending on whether you're looking at expanding transit or increasing the frequency of existing transit. 68% of survey respondents said they would like to add more sidewalks and bike lanes as a high priority. Safety has been a frequent topic at these pop-up events. That could be safety in terms of taking transit, biking, walking, just different modes and how that is safe for folks to be able to use across the system. All this feedback will also be included in what will be a final appendix for the RTP, so we'll be highlighting all the different work that we've done across the region, what were the themes we heard across these different phases that we've had, where were we, when were we across the region for all of this work. So a quick map of where we've been across the region so far. Purple was when we were in our visioning stage, making sure that the priorities that we included in the plan still made sense, what was missing from our plan. Teal are those investment priorities. So if you had a limited budget, what would you spend our dollars on across the region? So highlighting, aligning with the project types that we're including in the regional transportation plan. We've tried to get out to as many communities as possible, and we're still scheduling others across the region to make sure we're reaching all the different communities that we have across our 10-county area. We do have a number scheduled with various youth commissions across the region, so we will be before Castle Rock and Westminster, I believe, over the next month, and we continue to schedule those groups, those meetings with either groups that already exist or trying to find pop-up events that we can set up a booth at and ask folk in the region what their priorities are. Coming back to our timeline, DRCOG staff will complete scoring this week on the 132 projects that are currently in the pot, including those that we received after the call closed. That will be provided to our regional review panel in early November, along with all those additional data points that I noted, our equity index analysis, congestion mobility scores, county prioritization, public feedback to date. DRCOG, CDOT, and RTD staff are meeting weekly through early December, and then we expect to be back before y'all in December to start the recommendation process to get before our board in January. We don't anticipate adopting this plan until October of next year, but that's the runway we need to get through our public and stakeholder review process, our modeling, our document development, and so after January, we'll pivot to those other key pieces of our process. That concludes my presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you very much for your assistance, DRCOG's assistance for this process. I think we started back in April, I think. Thank you for the heads up and allowing all the sub-regional forums to start preparing for these submissions and all the technical guidance along the way. And in particular, also the partnership with CDOT staff. I know all of you are working behind the scenes to help local agencies with these submissions. So thank you. Any questions or comments to DRCOG? Justin Begley.
Thanks, Chair. And I'd echo that. Thank you very much. As the technical discovery has gone on. It's been shared with us, and that's been super helpful. And as we prepare for the additional bit of process you were suggesting, I have two questions. So one piece I'm looking at in the attachment is the estimated year of completion or opening. I didn't see that in the evaluation criteria. Can you explain how that information is now or will be used in the future?
Yep, so that'll help us with our fiscal constraint conversations. We have a set amount of funding we think is available out to 2050. But we also have to break that out across the staging periods that we're including in the plan just to be fiscally responsible and show constraint for our federal partners. So we're not evaluating maybe the readiness of projects like we would in the TIP using that information. It'll help us when it comes time to work with our other regional partners. C.RTD, does this project make sense? Opening at this point. If not, what might occur sooner, occur later? How do we show it in the plan, portray it in the plan? So it's not something we're giving a 3-2-1 score to. It's more about helping us identify fiscal constraint across the plan horizon.
Okay, thank you. And then also grateful for DRCOG taking the lead on submitting a handful of projects from the regional rapid transit plan. Where DRCOG has submitted corridors there, and the local subregion has submitted complementary scope, let's call it. Those will be, I suspect, I should say, will be scored independently. Is there any opportunity, they'll just kind of live on as two separate projects on the same corridor? Is there any other thinking around that now, or is that kind of to be determined?
So they are being scored individually, but we will look to where appropriate, not just with the BRT corridors, but anywhere we received multiple submittals along a corridor or further along a corridor, whether we can compile those into a larger project, if that makes sense, if they're going towards the shared vision for that corridor. Depending on what the scope is, we might still show multiple projects if we need to when it comes to air quality conformity and GHG modeling. So maybe a project ultimately won't be done until 2040, but there's a piece that we know we have to show in 2030 just based on our definition of regionally significant projects. So it'll be a both and, but we'll look to, when appropriate, compile those projects into one shared vision for the plan.
Thanks, Alvin.
I'm going to foolishly attempt to expand on that, and Alvin, please tell me if I'm incorrect. So right now, we all think of projects, right? That's how we're all wired to think. We have a list of projects. We got 104 projects submitted. These are really investment priorities. And to Alvin's point, these are concepts, these are ideas, these are priorities that you've all submitted to us. So as we go through and we translate these concepts and these priorities to actual investments in the plan, there not only could be some combining of similar project locations, project types, that sort of combining or integration. There also is going to be potentially some translation, let's say, of projects that right now was submitted as a candidate project, but ultimately may end up in the plan either as a uniquely identified project or it could be in our project funding categories. In other words, the pathway to get in the plan is multi-varied, multi-stepped. And so what you see today isn't exactly what it's going to look like when it ends up in the plan, but we're going to try to account for in the best we can under fiscally constraint to fit in as many of these priorities, these concepts into the plan, even though what ends up going in the plan could look just a little bit different at the end of the day. Alvin, is that fair?
Yes, thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Yes. Justin Schmitz.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin. I guess one question, you talked about all that public outreach that DRCOG did. First of all, I thought that was creative to go out and, do pop-up events, get to where people are. And I know we've been trying to do more of that, right, and find it. I guess one question was, did you see a lot more interaction this time than the last time DRCOG went out? Do you have any numbers to compare that, or just curious how much value you got out of it?
So we could compare it to our previous cycle. Unfortunately, at that point, We started getting into the midst of COVID, so it wouldn't be a one-for-one in terms of number of events we were able to attend and folk we were able to reach. But in terms of like whether we found it helpful, useful for this process, absolutely. We've tried to make the activities that we've been at through in the community as interactive as possible. And so we've had really great success with a coin exercise that we recently did related to investment priorities. We're using all this information and tagging it by location as well. So are we potentially hearing something different from Douglas County versus Arapahoe versus Gilpin? And so we're tagging all that information as appropriate with locations and seeing how themes are different across the region. So I think it's going to be very helpful as we get into this evaluation phase with the priorities that we're evaluating.
Great. Well, thanks for doing that.
Great. Well, thank you, Alvin. Thank you very much. Thank you for the update. Oh, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Grant. No, just to tag on to what you were saying, once again, this is one of those activities, just a tremendous amount of work. Just like the Active Transportation Plan, this is one of our foundational documents. Takes just a tremendous amount of work, a lot of people. So I do want to thank Alvin and the staff and all of you because we really do this in partnership with you all as local governments through the transportation forums, CDOT, RTD, our other stakeholders. So just thank you very much. We're getting there. This is a good step.
And we will move on to item number 7. This is the shared micromobility in the Denver region update. This is attachment E in your packet. And this will be presented by Steph Pepperino, Emerging Mobility and Transportation Demand Management Planner.
Good afternoon, Chair Grant and members of the TAC. My name is Steph Paperno, and I'm here this afternoon to discuss shared micromobility in the Denver region. So this summer, DRCOG published an update to the shared micromobility white paper. This was a collaborative effort between DRCOG and the Micromobility Work Group, and it was originally published in 2020. The paper includes information about trip trends, regulatory models and how those models have evolved and changed over time, best practices when it comes to program implementation, and best practices when it comes to operations and safety. New to, additionally, that we released this year is a newly added 2-page checklist for jurisdictions that might be interested in launching shared micromobility for the first time. And we'll talk a little bit more about that checklist in a few slides. But before we dive too deep, what do we mean when we say shared micromobility? So shared micromobility refers to shared, small, lightweight, low-speed, human and electric-powered devices. So think scooters and bikes. There's a couple different models that they can operate as. They can operate as a docked or station-based system or a dockless system. So on the top right of the slide, you'll see a docked system. This is from the city of Boulder and their B-Cycle program. Or on the bottom of the screen, this is an example of dockless shared micromobility, and this photo is taken from the city and county of Denver. Typically, when we talk about shared micromobility, we're referring to short trips, less than 2 miles. So this is very different from someone who might be going and renting a bicycle from a local bike shop, where you'll typically rent the bike for several hours for a fixed cost. And shared micromobility has been around the Denver region for quite some time. It was first introduced in 2010 in the city and county of Denver with the launch of B-Cycle. In 2017, the city of Aurora was the first city in all of Colorado to launch a dockless system, and that was with OFO, Lime, and Spin. And as you can see, there is quite a few operators listed on this screen. And as these programs have evolved over time, we've really seen some of these operators condense and merge, leave the market, or go out of business. And so what is the picture of shared micromobility in the region today? Currently, we have 4 active, what we call permanent programs, and 1 pilot program in our region. Today, our operators include Bird, Spin, Lime, and B-Cycle. And one thing to note is that all of these programs are fully electric programs. So B-Cycle in the city of Boulder did at one time offer traditional bikes, but the fleet was converted to all electric in 2021. Not listed on the screen, but also worth mentioning, is that we have a few bike libraries across our region. So Northeast Transportation Connections, which is a transportation management association, they launched a bike library in 2018, and that's really for multiple hours or even several day rentals. Montbello Organizing Committee also launched a bike library more recently in 2024. And then there's several shared micromobility programs outside of DRCOG's boundary. DRCOG manages and maintains what we call the Shared Micromobility Story Map, which is an online resource that highlights all of these programs across not only DRCOG's boundary, but across the state. And we keep this story map updated annually. And it shows active programs, but also historical programs that are no longer active. And so DRCOG convened the Micromobility Work Group, which is a group of planners and stakeholders across the region in 2019 to discuss their top regional priorities. The group selected data sharing and data standards as their top priorities back in 2019. And we discussed having DRCOG potentially manage a regional platform for software platform for trip tracking and policy and program regulation, rather than having each jurisdiction go out and procure software on their own. So we discussed having DRCOG go out for solicitation for shared micromobility software, that we'd manage the solicitation and manage the contract to take some of that burden off the local governments. So in 2019, DRCOG released a solicitation for a software platform, and we went through a competitive selection process and selected Ride Report. A screenshot from the public-facing dashboard on Ride Report is shown on the right-hand side. This is from the city of Arvada. The software really allows us to track trips in real time. It allows for program managers to manage the right-of-way in real time, so we can see both local programs and programs from the regional level. And it allows those program managers to update policies, which are then instantly communicated with the operator. So for example, if you want to add in a new no parking zone or a slow zone, you can do that on the back end in Ride Report, and it instantly is communicated to that operator. And this is now known as the Shared Micromobility Data Collaborative, and it is made possible through financial contributions from DRCOG, CDOT, RTD, and local participating jurisdictions. Currently, City of Boulder, City of Arvada, and the City and County of Denver are active participants in the Shared Data Collaborative. But we had up to 7 participating members at one point, including Aurora, Littleton, Thornton, and Brighton. And really having DRCOG manage this process adds a couple different benefits. One, the local jurisdictions can access this software at a much discounted rate compared to if they went to procure the software on their own. And if a local jurisdiction adopts a shared micromobility program and wants to become a user on Ride Report, we can do that very easily through a simple letter of interest process, which is managed by DRCOG. And we want to make sure that Ride Report is serving our member governments each year. So we do a survey every summer to the users of Ride Report to make sure that they're still happy with the platform. On the right-hand side, you'll see a bar chart from the summer of 2025 survey, where you can see that all of the respondents who answered this question were either very satisfied or mostly satisfied. And it's also worth noting that we did go back out for another solicitation in 2023 and opted to select working with Ride Report. And because we are able to track these trips, we know that shared micromobility is very popular. So from 2019, there have been 25 million shared micromobility trips across the region. We're going to dive into some of these trip trends. So it's probably no surprise to anybody in this room that shared micromobility peaks in warmer summer months. So we can see from the data in Ride Report that their peak trips happen in Q3, or July through September, and our lowest number of trips occur in Q1 and Q4. So just to give you a sense of what you're looking at on this screen, on the left is a chart from 2019 to 2024 for Q3, and on the right-hand side, same time frame, 2019 to 2024 for Q4. So in Q3 2024, we had 2.7 million trips, and in Q4 2024, we had 1.8 million trips. So almost more than 1 million trips in Q3 of the same year. We also know that shared micromobility trips are typically short, less than 2 miles in length. And we also know that they help connect people to transit. So 70% of shared micromobility trips in our region were less than 1.5 miles. Another way of looking at this is the average shared micromobility trip distance in our region is 1.4 miles. So how do we know that shared micromobility trips are connecting people to transit? So our programs in Denver, Arvada, and Boulder do community surveys for both people who ride shared micromobility, but also people who are not active riders of shared micromobility. And the community surveys show that people are taking these devices to connect to transit. So in Denver, 43% of riders use these shared micromobility devices to connect to transit, 54% of riders in Arvada, and 23% of riders in Boulder. We also know that these trips are replacing vehicle trips. So from those same surveys, 51% of respondents said that they would have driven or taken a ride-hailing trip if it weren't for shared micromobility. 34% said the same in Arvada, and 47% in Boulder. We know again from these same surveys that people want safe places to ride. So 48% of respondents said that safe places to ride would encourage them to ride more. That was from Denver's survey. 32% of respondents said that they would ride more in Arvada's survey. And lastly, Boulder worded this question a little bit differently on their survey, but 43% of respondents reported a preference to travel on sidewalks due to feeling unsafe in the street or in unprotected bike lanes. We know from talking to our partners who operate these programs that parking and sidewalk riding can continue to be major challenges. And so there's some creative solutions that both the jurisdictions and the operators are coming up with to help manage some of these challenges. So on the left-hand side, this is a screenshot from the Lime app. The red shows no parking areas, and it's harder to see, but in the yellow, these are piloted mandatory parking zones. So again, the jurisdictions can go in on Ride Report and identify these zones as policies, and then they're communicated to the operators who then communicate them to the devices. On the right-hand side, you'll see this is an image of a parking corral in the city of Boulder, which they call a lime grove. Another creative solution was recently rolled out by Lime. This is currently being beta tested. This is a tool called Where to Lime Rider, and this is a trip planning assistance tool. So you can see on the right-hand side in blue, they are proposing what they think is the safest route that can avoid sidewalk riding. So this will be in neighborhood bikeways or on trails or protected bike lanes. And really the goal with this new tool is to encourage people to ride in safe facilities and not on the sidewalk. And we have a lot of exciting things happening in our region when it comes to shared micromobility. So the city of Boulder is preparing to release a new RFP to go out for a recompete for their operators. The city and county of Denver actually has their RFP out, and it closes on Thursday, but they're doing a recompete as well. The city of Longmont is leading the Northwest Regional Electric Bike Share effort, and they'll be preparing to launch an RFP hopefully by later this year. The city of Golden is conducting a docked electric solar power bike share feasibility study, and that was a grant that was rolled out through the Innovative Mobility Set Aside program through DRCOG. And then lastly, Denver South is piloting a new parking technology from Norway called Spark Park, and they are piloting this in the Greenwood Entertainment District. And that's an image of Spark Park's technology on the right-hand side. And then I mentioned this earlier, but we did recently release a checklist for agency implementation. So if your jurisdiction wants to implement shared micromobility, but you might not know where to start, this checklist is supposed to be a guide, and it offers kind of 6 key principles to help set your program up for success. But one thing that DRCOG can really assist with is defining and setting those data sharing requirements, number 5 on this list. And so lastly, we are very happy to help. So if you ever have questions about shared micromobility or you want to brainstorm ideas about micromobility, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We've helped communities with those data sharing standards, understanding the best regulatory models, training staff on how to use the Ride Report platform. Like I mentioned, we have the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside program, which we can help fund micromobility efforts in the planning stages. And the Innovative Mobility Set-Aside is currently accepting letters of interest through November 15th. And then we also have the Micromobility Work Group. So if you're interested in getting plugged into that, we meet on a quarterly basis, and we have the next meeting on Tuesday, December 16th. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Steph, for this update, and thank you for DRCOG's work to coordinate the region and host these working group meetings and share information and technical guidance in this emerging and always changing landscape of technology for micromobility. It's very much appreciated. Are there any questions or comments for DRCOG staff? Chris Quinn.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Just a curiosity on so the data is coming directly from the providers?
So it comes from the providers through an API called MDS, and MDS then gets fed through Ride Report, which was acquired by INRIX. So passed from operators through an API into the INRIX Ride Report platform, which we then have visibility into.
Okay, so it is part of the jurisdictions and that have been participating, then as part of when they're putting out the, I can't remember how it's called, the request for vendors or whatever, they then agree to share that data through the platform as
Correct.
part of the.
Yeah, it's written into that contract, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Justin Schmitz.
Just one more comment. I think that was a good idea to go all electric as someone who used to use those old B-cycles and have to go uphill, right? Anybody who remembers those were brutal. So, but no, I'm sure we've seen use increase, right, by the investment. I think all those people are making it a system that is accessible for people, and but you're seeing not only that, but the ease of use grow.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for the update, Steph, and again, thank you for all of your work and all of DRCOG staff and assistance. I know our Northwest group has tapped DRCOG multiple times as we've trying to explore various ways to get micromobility off the ground in our region. So very much appreciate it. Thank you for the update. We will move on to item number 8. This is the final informational briefing item. The State Senate Bill 2530 Planned Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Transit Projects Inventory Update. This is attachment F in your packet, and this will be presented by Emily Lindsay, Active and Emerging Mobility Program Manager, and Alvin Vidal Sanchez, Regional Transportation Planning Program Manager.
All right, good afternoon. Second meeting in a row with me as the last one on the agenda, everybody. I'm gonna take it home here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Lindsay. I manage the Active and Emerging Mobility Program at DRCOG, and here with Alvin to chat with you all about Senate Bill 2530. Who here has heard of Senate Bill 2530 or read it? Okay, we'll move along quickly then. Essentially, this requires metropolitan planning organizations such as DRCOG to compile a list of bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects within our MPO area. And so DRCOG is required to collect these from jurisdictions of 5,000 people or more. That sounds like a lot of projects. I agree. Planned projects can come from a variety of different sources. They can come from capital improvement plans, from long-range plans, sub-area, neighborhood, all kinds of plans. And so this really is an open kind of umbrella of project types. This is for bicycle infrastructure. This could be travelways. It could be supportive infrastructure. This is also pedestrian infrastructure. Again, it could be travelways like sidewalks or supportive infrastructure like crossings. Also includes transit. This could be service or facilities. This could be for both fixed route or on-demand transit. We realize this is a big ask. This could be a lot of projects. So what do we need from you all? Since we are trying to compile this into a regional inventory, there are a couple of kind of key things that we need to know about the projects to do that. A project name, a project type. Is it a bikeway? Is it a sidewalk? Where is this project? Is it along a corridor? Do you have specific geographic references? And then where did this project come from? What plan identifies this project? You can submit additional information if you have, your active transportation plan and you have a table of planned projects. You go ahead and you submit that. If it includes information like length, cost, description, keep it in there. And there are obviously projects that we do not need to capture. This can be things like existing transit operations or maintenance or existing routes and services. This could be active transportation encouragement programs, plans, studies, data collection efforts, all that good stuff. It's wonderful that we're all doing it, but we do not need to include that in this inventory. And so we're in the spirit of trying to make this an easy ask for you all. We have linked a form in the memo, and more information will be going out via e-blast later this week. But essentially, you can upload whatever format you have this information in. We would love a shapefile if you have it. If you don't, tables are fine. We will work with you. So we can accept a variety of file types. You simply just upload whatever file type you have. If you have them separately, upload a bunch of files and we will figure it out. So according to Senate Bill 2530, the deadline for local governments to submit this information to DRCOG is the end of the year, so December 31st, 2025. You are obviously more than welcome to submit any time before then. And if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, we have more information going out by email later this week, and there is an overview document in your packet that has a lot of good info. But Alvin and I are ready for any questions that you all might have.
Thank you, Emily, for this overview, and thank you for DRCOG taking on this big responsibility of collecting all this information from all the local agencies. Do you have any questions from the TAC for DRCOG? Kent Mormon.
I don't envy you having to get all of together for this, Emily. But the question I have, you say plan, if it's in a plan. So we happen to have a transportation and mobility plan, and we're finishing up our bicycle update, bicycle and trail update that will go out to 2050. Do you want it all the way to 2050 or in a table, or do you want the next 10 years? What's the timeline for planned projects, or is it more on CIP?
No, so there is no horizon year listed in the legislation. So anything that is in a plan, you can submit to us. It doesn't have to be funded. There doesn't have to be a date associated with it. So if it's in a plan, you can submit it.
Thank you.
Bill Riccio.
Thanks, Emily. Is this for projects just on the regional roadway system? And then if yes, is it the one we just passed in July?
So these are both great questions. So the legislation kind of allows MPOs to choose whatever area they want to identify the projects around. We have decided to use our regional roadway system to do that. We recognize that in some cases that won't be directly along our regional roadway system, especially for bikeway projects. Sometimes that is at or adjacent to. So we're leaving the door open so that you all do not have to cull through specific projects. If you have all of your projects listed somewhere, we will do that on your behalf. But our ultimate outcome and deliverable to TLRC will be kind of a pared down list at or along our regional roadway system. We are thinking probably for pedestrian projects will probably be along the regional roadway system, and then bicycle projects will probably include a half-mile buffer, kind of just to cover at or adjacent to the system. But if you have them all together, submit them all. We will use them. We're also, like Aaron mentioned in his presentation before this, conducting a gaps analysis in our region. So really, the more data, the better.
And then one more question. Is this just, like, do you expect this to be a recurring exercise or TBD?
That is a great question. I don't have a current update schedule. Theoretically, we are asked to incorporate this exercise into other planning projects so that it can inform things like the TIP or the RTP. There's not, again, a requirement to do this on a specific time frame yet. So I will defer to others if anybody else has additional information to what's in the Senate bill, but I am not in the minds of that developed this.
It's just helpful to know what process on the back end, like, we should set up, basically.
Yeah, I think right now we're planning to do this as a one-time exercise at this point in time to meet this legislative requirement and this timeline. Right now, we don't have a second ask for you yet.
Okay.
Art Griffith.
Yeah, it's really easy for me to send you a PDF. Would that be okay? Because sometimes I have to stand in line for all the GIS reports, and a PDF I can create myself, if that's okay.
Yes, whatever is easy for you, just let us know.
Alex Hyde-Wright.
For this inventory, is DRCOG going to be pulling any projects from the RTP and Active Transportation Plan, or are you starting from scratch with this call?
So the first kind of chunk of the requirement is for local governments to submit projects, and then we do have after January 1st, we will have a period before we have to submit our whole inventory to collaborate with folks like CDOT, like RTD. So we'll have an opportunity to kind of like fill in some gaps depending on what does or doesn't look like it's submitted. So right now for this first chunk, the requirement is for local governments to submit all of their planned bicycle, pedestrian, and transit projects. So we will look to you all to submit what you have.
Art?
What about TMAs? Can they submit directly, like Denver South or something?
They are not required to submit. It's just local governments with 5,000 people or more. So we're really just looking for local governments at this point. And then state, obviously the state and RTD will be collaborating with to finalize the inventories.
Brody?
Is there a place where we can reference what a pedestrian project is, what a bicycle project is, or what a project is?
Yeah, so in your packet, there is an overview document where we've expanded the list of like what we consider to be a bicycle project, and you'll see things like on-street facilities, off-street facilities, supportive infrastructure. You'll see the same thing for pedestrian and transit projects. We tried to break it out, use our imaginations to figure out what the universe of projects might look like, recognizing that it is including but not limited to. But we did try to break out a pretty large list for folks to start with.
Additional questions or comments? Another one, Brody?
Follow up on that, thanks.
Yeah.
I don't see storage listed, so is that not considered a project?
I mean, if it is a project in a plan, you can certainly include it. I feel like for the most part, that won't be at or along the regional roadway system, depending on how kind of geographies are tied to that. But feel free to include the projects, and we will do the geographic analysis associated with the regional roadway system for the reporting.
Well, thank you, Emily. Thank you for this overview and for putting together this really thoughtful way to try to collect all of this information from us to meet the legislative deadline. Many of us will be in touch. All right. That concludes our items for the day. And do we have any updates from members or additional comments? Jacob, do you have anything you want to recap? Any reminders for the group?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Grant. So didn't know how long this meeting would last and how many folks would still be here at the end. Thank you all for hanging with us. But that's why I decided to talk about the nominating panel for elections at the beginning. But again, once again, if you're interested in volunteering, please, reach out to me. Just let me know. We will soon send out an email solicitation to members, because again, you have to be a member of TAC to be eligible. So we will send out that solicitation soon. It'll be pretty brief, but we'll just want to know if you're interested, which position you're interested in, and we'll ask for a brief statement of your candidacy and your interest for either chair or vice chair position. Thank you.
And that concludes our meeting. So our next meeting will be November 17th, TBD. We'll keep it on the calendar, but we will, DRCOG will be reaching out to see if that will be canceled. And we will be adjourning at 3:15 p.m. Thank you, everybody.